Okay, I'm going to show you the basics of Quicken, how I use it. Typically, it does a lot of different things, but I mostly use it for as a checking account register and keeping track of the credit card expenses. And this is what it looks like typically when you open up Quicken, and then we'll go right to the accounts because this is what I do every couple of weeks to balance the checking account, and everything below this line is something that's already shown up in our bank account, and I have reconciled except for these last two transactions that don't have a C. This is you can mark these all as reconciled, so I'll show you how I enter the transactions and then mark them as reconciled once I've reconciled them with the bank statement. So everything that's above this blue line and yellow, highlighted in yellow, is a future transaction. So this is how we see the cash flow. Payrolls coming out um, the, at the end of this month. That's 2 weeks payroll. But as you can see, here's the next deposit when all the percentage payments are due. Right around that same time, the Capital One card will be due, and the two rent payments. This is accounting for all the CEU money. Anyway, you can just kind of see the cash flow. This is what we want to stay in the black, obviously. When I go to enter new transactions, we want the date there. We'll say this is going to be a future transaction. I know that Lashina just paid her percentage payment. This is where we want to make sure we get the proper category, because when we run reports, especially for taxes at the end of the year, we want to make sure that all of the transactions are categorized properly, and that's how the accountant knows what are the expenses and the income lines for the taxes. This is just the amount. If you want to put a memo here, which just leaves yourself a note, let's say this was due um, 11/1. That was her payment that she made that was due um, this month. So then we hit enter. It was a future transaction, so it goes above the line. Now, let's say we went to the bank statement and reconciled these two transactions. We just go to reconcile status and hit cleared, and it will enter a C here. That's how I know all of these transactions down here have been cleared, and then I make sure that the balance here coincides with what the bank has. Mark these as reconciled. Okay, so that's how we balance this check register. Basically, we want to make sure that all of these have the correct categories. I'll show you a little bit about categories here in a second, but this one doesn't have a category because it's a transfer. We don't need to account for it in income and expenses because it's just going uh, between our accounts. Once we pay all these out, there will be a bunch of different transactions for continuing education, and I'll put the continuing education reimbursements as the category. It's categorized as a transfer right now just because I want to earmark it for that. Um, and I guess we can go ahead and put a category on it. This will all become a bunch of separate transactions, as I said, once those are paid out, and we'll make sure that they're all categorized as such. If you want to go and kind of curate the category list, you can do that. I'm just going to show you one thing here. So um, the categories for all of the um, clinicians are just their name. Feel free to change that. It's categorized as an income. Everything else is expense. So if you want to delete any of these old categories, you can. And then I'll show you if you, let's say you had some transactions that you um, coded to two different categories and you want to merge them, you can just merge, like let's say office improvements and maintenance. We've been categorizing them in two different places, these two different places the whole year. And we want to merge them. We'll just hit merge with another category. We're merging income with maintenance for the office. It's a subcategory of office here. So it's kind of indented there. So we'll merge those two and then delete the category improvements, which means it no longer will show up on this list and it will no longer uh, auto-populate when you type in like the beginning of it, like IMP. So then you hit OK, and those two categories, uh, office improvements and maintenance, would then become one, and all the transactions that were coded that way would be in one category, which would be called maintenance instead of two different ones. So that's the category list. When I go and pay bills, I have this list of bills, income, and transfers that are coming up. The first one that shows here is from February 1st. That's because I have everything in, so I have the cash projection over the next 2 months, right? So through the December 31st and then through January 31st. So let's say that we reached the end of January and we want to look at kind of put in the bills that we know are coming out for February. We'll just hit enter and then you can edit what we think the income is going to look like. This is all the income that we think is coming from all of the different clinicians. You can change the amounts here. You can delete, like we won't have Lydia anymore at that point, so we would delete that out. Um, so then if you hit enter, it will go ahead and enter on this date. This is the total amount, and it categorizes and splits out the categories based on the clinicians and the amounts that they each individually pay. If you want to change the entire, every deposit like this that comes once a month, you can hit edit this instance and all future instances. And again, it'll bring up this category split. You have to hit this split button and then it'll bring up all the clinicians and you can change the amounts or take people off or add somebody. Um, Hopefully these new clinicians will be earning and paying in a little bit more by then. So that then edits the recurring deposit. Okay, so then I have all the other bills that are listed here. Like this is the Derby rent. It actually needs to be changed to the new landlords, which we've been paying for a while. I just never paid it in here. I just enter it manually every time. This amount is also a little bit different. Um, so when I actually pay the rent, I'll enter it. This is an approximate amount. I'll enter it like this. Um, well, this is just editing the recurring bill. And so as you can see, it'll change the payee here to the new landlord in Derby. This is Real Property Holdings, the Wichita landlord. So anyway, it has all the bills here that we typically pay. Um, I don't have a lot. I don't have some of them just because they are normally going onto the credit card, and so a lot of them are contained in this payment, right? If we're paying most of the bills on the credit card, then um, this amount encompasses or totals up to be um, all the bills and then the extra irregular expenses that we have all on the credit card, and it just makes this a nice sum total, so we don't have to pay as much attention to the cash flow when all the bills come in and out. This is the payroll, somewhere around $3,000 for the entire month, so I'll enter it in as a future transaction. It's right here for the end of November, here for the end of December, or January 1st. So uh, it'll come out weekly, but that's about the total, so it helps me with the cash projection. So that gets us through pretty much the whole month of February, just these few transactions, but then every 2 weeks I'll go in and make sure there weren't some other transactions, plus the deposit that comes in from the clinicians is going to be a bunch of separate transactions um, that I will enter manually, just like I did this for this one for Lashina. And then obviously, when people start paying their rent for December, I'll enter their individual transaction and I'll take it out of this um, group batch deposit. The other thing that you can do on bills and income is see projected balances, which is real similar to what I have for cash flow here. But since we've already entered all of these bills up until February 1st, this projected balance will just start February 1st. You can scroll up and kind of see the cash flow. So you can use it that way as well. I just think it's easier to see the whole cash projection that's actually in the register. This is the other bank account. Here's the Capital One card, which we also um, have all of the transactions entered. So we need to go to the Capital One bill or statement or transaction register and make sure that everything that is spent for the previous 2 weeks is entered here. For example, let's say we bought some Christmas food from Dylan's. We also need to categorize in this account. It's going to be a future. Oops, I'll actually make this a dining out charge. Um, we can say Christmas gifts if we want to categorize it that way. Hit enter on the transaction and it goes in. These categories that you use in the credit card will also go on the taxes when you do a report. You just need to make sure in your report you um, select that you want to use all of these accounts so that it records all of the transactions and the categories for everything that you spent, which includes what you spent on the credit card and out of the checking account. I'll show you how to do reports in a different video.